Senate Bill 803 by Senator Roth, an act relating to professions and vocations.
Senator Roth.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. Senate Bill 803 is the sunset bill for the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. A sunset bill that has apparently caused a lot of consternation in the legislature and outside. Just to let you know what this bill does, it makes various changes to the operation of the board and provisions in the act stemming from our joint sunset review operation. And those changes include modifying the composition of the board to include representatives from the various occupations regulated by the board, updating the training practice requirements for barbers and cosmetologists, removes the requirement for completion of a practical examination prior to licensure, but substantially enhances the requirements for the written examination, including requirements with regard to health, safety, sanitation, and disinfection procedures, practices, and laws. And it, lastly, at least in terms of this list, updates the number of mandatory hours of training the applicant must complete in order to become licensed by the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, including an increase in the number of hours of safety and health curriculum an applicant must complete from 65 hours outlined in the regulations to 100 hours specified in the bill in order to protect licensees and consumers and promote public safety through knowledge in topics such as hazardous substances, chemicals and health and safety laws, agencies, bacteriologically, and preventing communicable diseases, infection, and sanitation. For example, in terms of the new hours, the bill requires 100 hours of training in disinfection and sanitation, which is a substantial increase from the 20 hours required presently on those particular subjects. Now, this training hour requirement is probably the most contentious in the bill. Currently, the hour requirement is 1,600 hours for cosmetologists and 1,500 hours of training for barbers. Now, we all know licensing and training can be a barrier to employment, particularly for our most disadvantaged. At the same time, I think all of us clearly recognize that we need a sufficient amount of training to ensure the health and safety not only of the individuals providing the care, in this case barbers, cosmetologists, and the like, but consumers. Now, in this legislature, certainly before my time and during my time, we have discussed this issue for years. We've asked the board and we have asked the industry for help. To my knowledge anyway, the board has never evaluated the actual risks to the consumers and licensees and evaluated where specific harm arises in justifying the 1,600-hour training requirement for cosmetologists and the 1,500-hour requirement for barbers. Yet, this standard continues to exist today, despite several requests by my predecessors in Business Professions and Economic Development Committee for an evaluation and help in evaluating these standards. So, in this bill, we set the training requirements at 1,000 hours for barbers and cosmetologists, and as I indicated previously, substantially increased requirements in the areas of health, safety, disinfection, and sanitation. And we set this 1,000-hour requirement based on input from the board now, and our examination of changes made in several other states in this nation where the training requirements have been reduced. Vermont and Texas down to 1,000 hours, Rhode Island down to 600 hours, New York and others continuing. Unfortunately, during the hearing that we conducted, and I had the privilege of chairing, we had very little input from industry during that public hearing, and I say unfortunately. Obviously, we want to get this thing right. We want to do the right thing for the right reasons, particularly in this area, encouraging upward mobility for all, while we ensure that consumers are fully, totally protected. We will continue to get this thing right. As you know, with this sunset bill, as with all of the others we have considered and will consider in this House, this is a work in progress. It's a joint process with the Assembly. The bill will clearly continue to take shape throughout the next number of months, and the feedback from our valuable industry partners who have spent years honing their skills will be key, and that includes the schools, will be key to determining the best course of action for the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology in the future and the state licensing requirements that we impose. Thank you for your patience in listening to me, and at the appropriate time, I'd respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Roth. Members, discussion and/or debate. Senator Wilk.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm standing today, and I'm going to be laying off SB803 this afternoon. With my apologies to my good friend from Riverside, who I think is an excellent committee chair. There's been some late opposition to this bill. Again, the author of the bill has said that he will work with them on the other side. As mentioned, this is a work in progress. But when you think of iconic companies in California, you think of, Walt Disney Company, HP, Amgen, and when you think of hair products, you think of Paul Mitchell Systems, which was a California company. When Paul Mitchell and Jean-Paul DeGiorio started the company, John Paul was living in his car. They had to borrow $700 to start the company. Today, their products are sold in 80 countries around the globe, and $500 million in sales. Back in 2001, they started cosmetology schools. Currently, they have 107 schools across the country. They just recently opened one in Europe. And in California, they have schools in Pleasant Hill, Modesto, Fresno, 2 in Sacramento, San Francisco, Truckee, San Jose, Pasadena, Temecula, San Diego, Costa Mesa, and Sherman Oaks. And what's interesting about this, so one of the problems with the bill is, and again, it's all, as far as we know, it's arbitrary, is at 1,600 hours. Now this bill wants to take it down to 1,000. There's only 3 states that are at 1,000. One of those is Texas. And we don't have a history of following Texas. We want Texas to follow us. And of course, the challenge with that, if you do leave California, and people are leaving, we had a colleague from Northern California admit that earlier this week, and you go to another, if we were at 1,000, you went to another state, you could not start working immediately. You would have to go and make up those hours. And I just don't think that works. One of the reasons why there's so many hours, at least on the Paul Mitchell schools, is not only health and safety, which is paramount, obviously, after what we've just been through, and obviously cutting hair competently, but also business practices. The interesting thing, which I didn't learn until this week, is that only about 8.5% of hairstylists work in those big box chains where there's the employer-employee relationship. 91.5% are people who are entrepreneurs. They go out and they rent a booth and they conduct their own business. Why? Maybe they want the independence. Maybe they're a mom, and they want that flexibility. So we need to make sure that we're not sending these people to the wolves, that they actually have the skill set needed to be successful and thrive once they go out into the workforce. So I'm really confident with our author that we are going to find the sweet spot between efficiency of the program and getting people licensed in a timely manner, and also that they have the educational background needed to be successful. And with that, I'm laying off today, and I look forward to working with the author as we move this to the next House. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wilk. Senator Waso.
What about Senator Waso?
You were a no? You didn't want to speak? I'm sorry, I was told you wanted to speak. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll take Senator Waso's time. While I won't stand up here and give a commercial for an employer in my district, I do want to, I supported this bill in committee. I support the bill today. I support the reduction in licensure hours in training for barbers and cosmetologists to acquire their license. I had the opportunity last week. Believe it or not, I got my hair cut last week, but I just had the barber take a little bit off. And I talked to him. He's been in the business for over 40 years, and I knew this was coming up, and his name's Captain Mike. I said, Captain Mike, well, when you got your license, how many hours did it take to get your license? And if I remember correctly, he said 200 hours. And so obviously this has grown over the decades of time for folks to get trained on their licensing. But ladies and gentlemen, 1,600 hours to become a licensed barber or cosmetologist in California. These are all very, they're all professionals. They all take their job very serious. But that's a lot of time and money that somebody has to invest to become licensed in this profession. And so as this bill proceeds and there's conversation about how to amend it and change it, I just want to encourage the author to continue working toward reducing the number of hours as much as possible so that we can lower the barriers of entry into this profession for the many Californians that want to take this profession serious and get to work earning a living so that they can stay here in California. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Allen and then Senator Glazer.
Members, I rise in support of the bill. I think this is going to improve access, and I also very much trust the author to steer this bill forward in a fair manner. I want to just bring up one issue that I've been discussing with my friend, Senator from Los Angeles, Senator Kamlager, and this is the issue. You know, as our state becomes more and more diverse, it is important. It is so important that those folks who work in barbering and cosmetology really learn the special skills and trade associated with working with people from different ethnic backgrounds. You know, our colleague, our good friend, Senator Mitchell, for example, had the Crown Act a few years ago that dealt with issues relating to discrimination for folks, for black folks in terms of hairstyles. And one of the issues that the Senator and I were just discussing was the lack of training amongst a lot of folks in the barbering world when it comes to working with black hair. This is something that it's a funny thing to say, but I spent a summer living and working in Africa. And when I went in to get my hair cut, they didn't know what to do with my hair. And it was a really scary experience. And I got to tell you, they just did a very little bit, and I kind of got out of there. And it really got me thinking to myself, well, what is it like, you know, if you're living in a community where not a lot of people look like you, all of the amenities and the services are not geared and tailored toward addressing your needs. Our society is becoming more and more diverse. It's so important that folks in the barbering world are able to work with all Californians. And I just would like to ask the author to commit to ensuring that issue continues to be addressed as this bill moves forward. And with that, with that commitment that I assume that he would be willing to give, I'm going to support this bill and support his efforts.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator Glazer.
Thank you, Madam President, members, and I'm certainly standing in support of SB803 and to continue to encourage my colleague, the senator from Riverside, to advance his good work to try to find the right balance, health and safety and training. I would note that to be a police officer in general in California requires 800 hours of training, 800 hours, and compare that to 1,600 hours to cut your hair. So something's out of whack. I want to say to the good senator from San Diego, appreciate his remarks on the floor and hearing the stories of his own barber only having to have 200 hours. Now, some might suggest that the effect of those 200 hours may indicate that maybe he could have used a little bit more training than that. But we'll put that aside. I'm happy to support this bill and hope that the senator will continue to work on all the issues and make this a more balanced process for barbers and cosmetologists who want to get into that profession in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Glazer. Senator Melendez.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, just for a moment, think about the importance of the work that we do here in the Senate, in this building, the effect that we have on people's lives, the number of laws that we change in all the different areas of that we change in the lives of our constituents. So think about that. Think about the hours of training that as senators we are required to go through in order to put those laws in place and change people's lives, and compare that to the number of hours that are required of someone to blow dry your hair. I would recommend an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Melendez. Members, further discussion or debate? Senator Dawley? Nope? Okay. Members, any further discussion or debate? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Roth, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say how much I appreciate the thoughtful remarks and comments and suggestions of my colleagues. I want to assure you that I am sensitive to the business models that exist currently in the state and the employees that are employed there. I'm also sensitive to both the occupational issues and the consumer safety issues that we grapple with in this sunset bill and others. I have to tell you, a day or so ago, I received a somewhat critical email from the cosmetologist who cuts my hair, and she has scissors, and I will be seeing her next week. So I can assure you that I take these comments and suggestions seriously, and I commit to work with all of you on the suggestions that you've offered to get this thing right. So thank you very, very much for your patience. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Roth. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Archuleta. Aye. Atkins. Bates. Aye. Becker. Aye. Borges.
Just know that I would never do that.
No.
Bradford. Aye. Caballero. Aye. Cortese. Aye. Dally. Aye. Dodd.
That's okay.
Aye. Durazo. Aye. Eggman. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Grove. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Wisso. Aye. Hurtado. Aye. Jones. Aye. Camlonger. Aye. Laird. Aye. Leyva. Aye. Limon.
Thank you.
McGuire. Aye. Melendez. Aye. Min. Aye. Newman. Aye. Nielsen.
Thank you among many.
Ochoa Bogue. Aye. Pan. Aye. Portantino. Aye. Roth.
Aye.
Aye. Rubio.
You all sent me that email. I thought, oh my God, big long thing.
Skinner. Aye. Stern. Umberg. Aye. Wachowski. Aye. Wiener. Aye. Wilk.
Senator moves the call. Members, we are moving to file item 43. Senator Wachowski. Madam Secretary, please read.